That day, he used the red arrow that could make anyone fall in love. The arrow shot out and hit his aunt. It slowly entered her body, and at that moment, she became completely infatuated with Mirai. Mirai had grown up in his uncle's house. His uncle, who took him in, also treated him as a vent for his frustrations. Living under someone else's roof, Mirai endured suffering every day. One day, he went to the rooftop, unable to bear the pain anymore, and decided to end his miserable life. When he came to, he realized he hadn't died and had been saved by Nasse. Mirai couldn't believe what was happening. Nasse told him she saved him in the last second before he hit the ground. Mirai, still wishing to die, asked Nasse to let him fall. As a high-ranking angel, she gave Mirai hope to live. After saying this, she flew with Mirai to another rooftop. Nasse promised to give Mirai love and freedom. She then showed her wings and said this was true freedom, possessing the unseen human ability to fly anywhere. Next, she used the angel's arrow of love. It made everyone fall in love with him, regardless of age or gender. Nasse then threw 3 red rings from her head onto Mirai. She explained that the angel's halo around him could not be removed and possessed the abilities she described. Mirai felt wearing this collar was strange. Nasse reassured him that normally people couldn't see it, but those who followed Nasse could. Mirai realized this meant other angels existed. Nasse confirmed his thought. He was asked to test his flying ability. In the next moment, a pair of angel wings sprouted from his back. He then flapped his wings and instantly flew off, quickly adapting to his flying ability and soaring through the boundless sky, deeply captivated by the beautiful scenery. Mirai reflected on how he had never truly lived his life and decided to live happily, as he was still a virgin. At this point, Nasse said that with his powers, he could easily steal anything he wanted. Mirai was surprised to hear an angel speak like a demon. Nasse then said that it was his aunt's family who killed his parents, who were the real demons. Mirai couldn't believe his aunt's family had killed his own parents and went home to confirm it. Using the red arrow, he successfully made his aunt fall in love with him. Mirai then asked if she and his uncle had killed his parents. Terrified, his aunt said her husband made her do it. Shocked by the truth, Mirai stood frozen. At that moment, the uncle was awakened by the noise. Suddenly, his aunt said it was he who tampered with Mirai's family car to inherit their wealth, killing all of them. Hearing this, the uncle knocked her to the ground, unable to believe they committed such an act for money. Overwhelmed by grief, Mirai knelt down, proclaiming that his aunt and her husband deserved death. Hearing this, his aunt grabbed a fruit knife and stabbed herself in the neck. Just then, an angel descended from the sky and took away his aunt's soul. Mirai didn't expect his aunt to die so easily. He was relieved to still be alive and decided to live happily, including his parents' share of happiness. Nasse said she came to ensure Mirai's happiness. The man with a pink tanma on his head had 8 girlfriends at once, each a popular girl group idol, all because he possessed the red arrow that could make anyone fall in love with him. He even boasted about it on TV, which fully exposed his angelic follower. Nasse then told Mirai that there are 13 god candidates on Earth, each with an angel, wings, and arrows. A god would be selected from these 13 candidates. As a high-ranking angel, Nasse also prepared a white arrow for Mirai, which kills instantly upon impact. Mirai realized he was on an unusual path. Seeing Tanma misuse his powers on the idols, Mirai decided to save the innocent girls. Unbeknownst to him, Tanma was playing poker in a car. While interacting deeply with the idols, Kanade suddenly opened the car door, and the next second, a white arrow shot out, piercing Tanma's chest. Kanade easily eliminated Tanma and flew away after clearing a god candidate. The next day, Mirai learned of Tanma's death, but the exact cause remained unknown. Nasse suddenly praised Mirai for his intelligence because he used the red arrow to make his uncle confess and return all the money. Mirai even bought his own apartment. Mirai was completely uninterested in these matters, and Nasse looked embarrassed. Suddenly, an emergency news report on TV announced a bank robbery and hostage situation. Just then, a figure appeared, and Mirai noticed wings on his back. After confirming with Nasse, he learned the man was also a god candidate. To act more effectively, he fired a red arrow, making the police believe him, then headed towards the bank. The robber aimed his gun at the approaching Kanade, but in the next second, he was hit by a red arrow. Kanade told him to surrender. Another robber appeared and fired at Kanade, who flew away to dodge the attack, but the first robber was shot dead. Angered by this scene, Kanade successfully dealt with the robber. Mirai was shocked to learn Kanade also had a white arrow, indicating a high-ranking angel was behind this god candidate. Kanade then approached the reporters and declared on camera that he was here to maintain world peace as a messenger from heaven, to defeat 12 enemies, and had already defeated one. He challenged the remaining 11 to come and fight him. Mirai watched in disbelief as he declared war on the other god candidates. He then asked Nasse to stay away from him to avoid revealing his status as a god candidate. Back home, Mirai asked Nasse for information about other angels and learned that angels are classified into 3 categories: special, first, and second grade. Mirai thought that by staying home, he wouldn't be discovered as a god candidate. Although Kanade made it clear he would eliminate other god candidates to become a god, Mirai didn't plan to just stay at home for his happiness. Nasse was surprised by Mirai's decision. Mirai said that without Nasse by his side, he wouldn't be exposed as a god candidate. He wouldn't let Kanade deprive him of his right to happiness. Meanwhile, Kanade had already taken off his battle clothes and turned out to be a high school student planning to kill the other 11 candidates to become a god. The next day, Mirai got dressed in his uniform, ready to go to high school. Nasse told him to call her if anything happened and that she would come immediately, no matter the distance. Soon, Mirai arrived at his new high school, where he would spend the next 3 years. Suddenly, a feather fell from the sky, and he saw an angel in the air. Could this be Kanade's angel? He calmed himself down to not expose his status as a god candidate and walked in trying to appear composed. But the next second, Revel suddenly flew in front of him. Revel's sudden appearance caught Mirai off guard. Mirai didn't expect to be found so quickly and asked Revel whom he was following. Revel said he was following a student from the same school, standing right behind him. Mirai turned sharply and saw it was his childhood friend Saki. The next second, he was hit by Saki's red arrow, realizing she was also a god candidate. However, he had always liked Saki, so he felt no change. But when he looked back, Saki appeared with a pink filter around her. Then, Saki asked Mirai if he had angel wings. Mirai happily confirmed he did. Saki told him to go to her room and wait for her return. Excited by the opportunity, Mirai immediately flew there. Saki's angel commented that the plan was as successful as imagined. Soon, Mirai arrived in Saki's room, anticipating a sleepless night filled with thoughts of her, influenced by the red arrow. Saki returned shortly after. Upon learning more, it was revealed that Mirai was followed by a special grade angel. Since he is a second grade angel, Saki doesn't have wings, so she asked Mirai to be her wings and protect her. Revel then facilitated a contract between Mirai and Saki, successfully binding them together. They went to the balcony to let Saki experience flying. Mirai said he would show her something amazing and flew straight upwards. From the upper atmosphere, they admired the stunning view of Earth. After the flight, they returned to Saki's room. Suddenly, Mirai received news on his phone about Kanade subduing some criminals. Revel explained that Kanade, in his quest to become a god, has been pretending to do righteous deeds and gaining media and police support, making him a dangerous presence. Thus, Saki could be his next target and in danger. Hearing of the threat to Saki, Mirai decided to immediately deal with him. Suddenly, Nasse appeared and stopped Mirai, explaining that his impulsive action was due to the influence of the red arrow. If Mirai dies, his wings and arrows will transfer to Saki. If Kanade dies, he will also gain wings and arrows, which will then transfer to Saki. This was all part of Revel's plan. At this point, Saki also told him not to go. Revel, frustrated by the failure of his plan, was criticized by Nasse as a scheming angel. They then decided to join forces against Kanade. However, Revel was worried that Mirai might act inappropriately towards Saki if the effect of the red arrow wore off. Nasse reassured him, saying that wouldn't happen because Mirai truly likes Saki. Just then, a live broadcast by Kanade interrupted the TV programming. On the broadcast, Kanade invited the other 11 god candidates to a so-called peaceful negotiation, which everyone perceived as a trap. He asked the candidates to meet at Jimbo Stadium in 2.5 days at 3 p.m. Revel warned that if they went, they would surely be killed. Mirai remained silent, but Nasse noticed he wanted to go to the scene. Indeed, Mirai showed up at Jimbo Stadium on the day. Several angels were also in the sky, indicating other candidates had arrived. Saki warned him not to look up to avoid exposing themselves. For safety, they held hands so they could fly away quickly if needed and left their angels at home. As 3 p.m. approached, the crowd in the stadium began a countdown. There was a loud noise in the sky as Kanade made a spectacular entrance. Amid the crowd's gasps, a dark shadow flashed by, revealing Shogo and Saburo in the sky, each accompanied by angels of 1st grade or higher. At that moment, they aimed the red arrow at Kanade, but it couldn't pierce him. It was then that Mirai and the others realized that Kanade had already been hit by a red arrow before, and a person can only be influenced by one red arrow, causing Shogo's arrow to bounce back. They quickly defended themselves and realized this person was not Kanade. Shogo recalled that Kanade must have thrown him down from above and left. Shogo recognized he wasn't Kanade and demanded the real Kanade to show himself, stating he had come upon invitation, and without Kanade's appearance, there would be no progress. He expressed an understanding of the plan to use a decoy to lure out the god candidates, then strike them from behind with a white arrow. However, since they were 2 and there was a 2-second interval between shots, it was impossible to kill both at the same time. Just then, Kanade appeared on the big screen, admitting their guess was almost right. The person on the field was indeed an ordinary person, and with 2 arrows prepared in advance, there was no interval between shots. However, he indeed couldn't attack from behind since they were back-to-back with no blind spots. After stating this, he went offline. Bewildered, the 2 then focused on Kanade's decoy, threatening to extract information about Kanade once his red arrow wore off. As they were about to leave, Chiyo suddenly appeared and asked to come with them because Kanade was too dangerous, and although she only had wings and no arrows, she would try her best to help. Saburo suspected that Chiyo was also controlled by Kanade. Seeing Chiyo's pitiful state, Shogo agreed to help, but insisted she must be hit by a red arrow. Chiyo agreed to this plan. As she was about to shoot the red arrow, Kanade suddenly appeared, embraced Chiyo, and quickly shot her with a red arrow before she could react. Shogo immediately fired a red arrow at Kanade, who flew away instantly, then appeared on the screen claiming Shogo was too slow. He declared the situation had reversed to 3 against 2. At this, Mirai and his companion at the edge of the field grew very anxious. Shogo loudly called for other god candidates present to join the fight to prevent Kanade from becoming a god, but only if they were hit by their red arrows. Surprisingly, 2 people agreed to these terms and appeared on the field, stating they only had arrows, not wings. Excited by the reinforcements, Saburo and Shogo prepared to shoot red arrows at them. Meanwhile, Kanade was watching from an unknown location using a plasma TV. The 2 newcomers were successfully hit by red arrows, proving they were not under Kanade's control. Just as they were about to return, Kanade and his decoy switched back. Saburo and Shogo then brought the 2 inside the arena, remarking that they now had 4 red arrows and a numerical advantage. At this moment, Mirai was also conflicted about whether to reveal himself and join them. Just then, Chiyo appeared on the screen. The real Kanade was already behind them, aiming a white arrow that shot out the next second. Shogo, unable to react in time, was hit by the white arrow and fell to the ground. Seeing this, Saburo immediately countered, but he was a step too slow and was hit by Kanade's red arrow. Kanade reversed the situation again. The red arrows hitting the green and pink Kanade lost their effect. At this, Saburo wondered how Kanade managed it. Kanade explained that both individuals were ordinary people who could be controlled without red arrows, through money, by hiring them to act in a play. Then Kanade absorbed Shogo's wings and red arrow. At this point, Mirai felt very uneasy. Kanade then bound Chiyo and Saburo together and aimed a white arrow at them. As expected, Saburo began to resist. Seeing the white arrow, he instinctively tried to escape and struggled. The white arrow shot out and sent him away. Chiyo, seeing this, started crying out of fear. At that moment, Revel in front of the TV urged Mirai to not act rashly because Chiyo was next to be executed. Chiyo desperately pleaded for help on the ground. Mirai internally debated whether to save Chiyo, knowing his own life would be at risk if he failed. Just then, Chiyo's angel appeared and told him to stop, but Kanade completely ignored her. Seeing this, Chiyo cried and loudly begged for help. At this point, Kanade provocatively asked if the other god candidates would just watch her die. Saki, witnessing the scene, was extremely distressed. Nasse appeared just in time to stop Mirai from acting impulsively. At this moment, Kanade noticed Nasse's arrival. Unfortunately, the one attracted was not a god candidate. Nasse stated that god candidates would not appear. The next second, Kanade shot a white arrow hitting Chiyo. Kanade told Nasse that his goal was to reduce the number of god candidates. Nasse flew up to him and said, as long as it wasn't her own follower dying. She didn't care about other god candidates dying. However, she would be happy if it was him who died. Kanade remarked that angels are strange beings. Nasse commented that his desire to become a god made him a troublesome guy. Kanade noted how such a cute angel could say such things, especially since she was a top-tier angel. Then, addressing the god candidates in the arena, he said it was time to go back and blend into the crowd as if nothing had happened. Seeing this, Mirai and his companion also prepared to leave. At this point, after absorbing the wings and arrows of the two, Kanade left without further delay. Back home, Mirai and Saki were very disheartened because they felt helpless. Revel told them to stop blaming themselves, as it was he who had instructed them not to act. Then, Mirai expressed a desire to kill Kanade. Hearing this, Nasse and the others were shocked, but he admitted he couldn't do it. Killing was not something he could do. Saki suggested they could collaborate with other god candidates to confront Kanade. Just then, Nanato agreed with the idea, startling everyone with his sudden appearance. Mirai immediately rushed to the balcony and pulled open the curtains, discovering a god candidate watching them from the balcony. The two prepared for battle, ready with their red arrows. Nanato asked them to shoot him with a red arrow to prove he was not being controlled and had no ill intentions. At that moment, Nasse said they could trust him without needing to shoot the red arrow, as she could tell Nanato was not lying. Nanato looked at her in surprise. Mirai considered Nasse's advice, but still prepared to shoot the red arrow if necessary. Nanato thanked them for their trust as he didn't have much time left. He had been diagnosed with cancer and told he had only 2.5 months to live. As he lay on his deathbed awaiting death, an angel appeared before him. Nanato thought it was the angel to take him away, but the angel said that those who calmly accept death are stronger than those who lose their will to live, and offered to make him a god to continue living. Thinking of his wife, child, and unborn baby, he accepted Barrett's request. He then used a red arrow to strike a wealthy person, securing $1 billion in cash to ensure his family's future without worry, understanding that someone like him could not become a god. Nasse said he did nothing wrong as it was all for his family. Nanato then explained that to prevent Kanade from becoming a god, he tried to connect with other god candidates as much as possible to find the most suitable person to become a god. He also hired 14 detectives and psychologists to help him find god candidates. It was they who discovered at the stadium that Mirai could see angels. From the videos sent back by the detectives, they knew they were good people. Nanato seriously asked them if they intended to become gods, to which Mirai and Saki had no plans to become gods. Nanato relaxed and said that those who want to become gods are not normal. He mentioned he is a fashion designer and had designed several outfits, suggesting they should hide their true identities. After saying this, Nanato bid farewell and left. Mirai said he is a reliable partner. Meanwhile, Kanade, a high school student, was preparing to visit the archery club at Mizukyo's invitation. Soon they arrived at the club to watch a junior shoot arrows. During the visit, Kanade asked Mizukyo what he would wish for if possible. Mizukyo said he wished for all unattractive women to disappear from the world, a sentiment Kanade agreed with. When asked about his wish, Kanade meaningfully said he wanted his deceased sister to come back to life. Suddenly, Mizukyo noticed that the archery club was empty, and Kanade, seeing no one around, climbed in through the window. Considering that a normal arrow's range is 36 meters, but shooting 2 overlapped arrows could extend it to at least 60 meters, and combining 3 could reach over 90 meters, they realized the element of surprise this offered. At that moment, as Mirai and his friends were researching other god candidates, a news flash suddenly interrupted on TV. The news reported that a murderer, who had killed several female middle school students 2.5 years ago, had escaped and publicly declared to continue killing. Nanato said she must have been rescued by Kanade, who also provided her with wings and a red arrow. Already a murderer with wings and a red arrow, she could easily abduct people and evade capture. Another young girl was brutally murdered by her. Mimi is a bona fide serial killer, targeting female high school students. At this time, the people who saw the news were also gathering her information, confirming that Kanade had given her the red arrow and wings. Revel began analyzing, stating that Kanade first shot her with a red arrow and then gave her the extra wings and red arrow. The effects would disappear along with the red arrow that hit her after 33 days, meaning she could freely kill using the wings and red arrow until then. Nanato said Kanade's only goal was to become a god. If any god candidate tried to stop Mimi, Kanade would target and kill them. Mirai asked what they should do. Nanato replied that they must find her and kill her quickly. Hearing this, Mirai and Saki were shocked. Nanato continued, explaining that as a murderer, she could easily manipulate people to love her with the red arrow, making it easier to act. She might be killing now, but Nanato was wrong. At that moment, she was enjoying her dinner. Suddenly, Kanade showed up uninvited, asking them to keep their voices down. He mentioned he had seen the girl at the tower top and thought she was pretty. Wasn't she supposed to choose unattractive women? Mimi replied that the girl was ugly enough for her. Kanade looked at the girl and agreed she could pass for unattractive. Mimi then turned back with a meaningful look. After these instructions, Kanade left. Mimi told the girl they would continue, but this time, it would be a more exciting game. She then tied up the girl, who was thrilled, feeling it was wonderful. Soon, Mimi pulled out her 2.5-meter-long Nepalese kukri and quickly dealt with the girl. The red arrow also emerged from her body. After retrieving the red arrow, Mimi complained that it was not enough fun for her alone, and she prepared to go out to find her next target. Meanwhile, Mirai and the others, still discussing, saw a news report about another girl's body found on the tower top. At that time, Mimi was still at the scene and had not flown away. Nanato was very angry, seeing this as an obvious trap set for god candidates, because only they could reach such a high place and could not hide their identities there. At this moment, Mimi started her move, shooting all the police with the red arrow. However, the police chief said that even though Mimi was his favorite person, she was still a murderer. Mimi was surprised that he could resist the effects of the red arrow through sheer willpower. Nanato decided to go to the tower top to subdue Mimi and prepared to bring his own equipment. He asked Mirai to wear the outfit he had designed for him, while he wore a heavier set of gear. Mirai's outfit, the latest development from the company, was made of vibranium, which is lightweight, durable, and impact-resistant. Wearing a hood and a protective mask, they could also conceal their identities. Nanato told Saki and Revel to stay at home as it was safer there, and instructed Mirai to shoot himself with a red arrow first if a fight ensued, to avoid being hit by their arrows. If Kanade did not show up soon, he would shoot Mimi with a gun, as she was an uncontrollable murderer with wings. After Nanato gave his instructions, he and Mirai flew over. Meanwhile, Mimi was leisurely scrolling through videos. Soon, Nanato reached the top of the tower and aimed his gun at her. Mirai, planning a surprise attack, hid in a corner beneath the tower, watching to see if Kanade would appear. Mimi showed no intention of fighting and continued lying on the ground. She called to Nanato to come closer and mentioned that Kanade told her if someone with wings came, they would be together forever. Nanato felt uneasy about this. At that moment, Kanade, hiding in a room, pressed a switch on his phone. Mirai, deemed too soft and naive, had hoped to persuade Kanade to lay down his weapons and repent. Just then, he saw Nanato blasted away and quickly flew to catch him in the air. Fortunately, Nanato regained consciousness. Relieved, Mirai hadn't expected that Kanade would kill without using a white arrow. Suddenly, Kanade appeared behind them, aiming a white arrow at them. Mirai asked Kanade why he was killing people and if he understood the feeling of losing family. Kanade responded that today would be the last time innocents would be sacrificed, and from now on, he would not kill those who were not god candidates. Knowing a major battle was imminent, Mirai and Nanato prepared to confront him together. At that moment, Kanade called his angel, Meza. Nanato summoned Mirai's angel, Nasse, and asked if this was an angel of the same high rank as his. Realizing that he too had a white arrow, Nanato then told Mirai to ready the red arrow. Nanato's actions made Kanade believe he had the white arrow. Kanade fell for it and decided to eliminate Nanato first, claiming he had also planted a bomb in another building visible from their location. He warned that detonating it would cause many deaths and force them to choose between their own deaths or the deaths of others. Nanato didn't believe him, to which Kanade dared him to test his claim, saying any deaths would be on Nanato's hands. As Kanade was about to press the detonator, Nanato stopped him but insisted that only one of them should die. Kanade agreed to these terms. The next second, a white arrow burst forth. Mirai immediately rushed forward and used a red arrow to block the white arrow's attack, confusing Kanade. He hadn't expected Mirai to use the non-lethal red arrow to counter the lethal white arrow. Even Barrett was surprised by this unconventional use of the arrow. Enraged, Kanade prepared to detonate the bomb. Unable to hold back any longer, an infuriated Kanade decided to kill Mirai first. Facing the imminent white arrow, Mirai again used a red arrow to block the attack. Kanade charged forward, not expecting Mirai, who wasn't using a white arrow, to hold his own in the fight. Suddenly, Kanade attempted to sneak attack Nanato. Mirai arrived just in time to block the attack. At home, Saki wondered why Mirai wasn't retaliating with a white arrow. Seeing the situation, Nanato was unsure what to do, but realized they couldn't continue like this. He prepared to use his gun to support Mirai. Approaching Kanade from behind, he shot at him to gain control, and then instructed Mirai to shoot his arrow. Mirai rushed forward with the red arrow. Just as he was about to hit, he saw Kanade's face under the mask and hesitated for a second. Seizing the moment, Kanade escaped. Nanato regretted not realizing Kanade was wearing a bulletproof vest. Unable to spot Kanade, they flew away but soon returned. Meanwhile, Kanade went to the hospital to check his gunshot wound, which was thankfully not serious due to protective measures. He also mentioned setting bombs elsewhere as a bluff. He wouldn't harm anyone other than God candidates. Seeing his face revealed made him very angry. Saki couldn't sleep alone at night and sought out Mirai. She asked the angels to leave them alone for the night. The two ended up sleeping together without anything happening. Saki then rested her head on Mirai's back, confessing she felt like dying. As Mirai was about to respond, Saki interrupted him, expressing her feelings of uselessness and being a burden since Mirai always had to protect her. Mirai disagreed, saying he also wanted to strive for their future. Saki reminisced about a childhood spring outing with Mirai, searching for four-leaf clovers in the wild. Unable to find any herself, Mirai gave her the clovers he found, which made her incredibly happy. Since then, she considered Mirai her best friend, with the clover as their token. Recalling those times, Mirai felt truly happy, though Saki just wanted to remain good friends. She bullied Mirai when he was most alone after losing his family. To fit in with others, she pinched her nose and joined in despising him as he passed by. After middle school, she wanted to apologize to Mirai and thought to return his four-leaf clover, chasing after him. Unexpectedly, she saw him jump from a building. Too scared, she ran away and considered suicide by the sea. Luckily, Nasse arrived and told her Mirai was not dead, which relieved her. Still, she couldn't forgive herself, and asked Mirai to kill her, whether with a white or red arrow. In the sky, Mirai remained silent. As Saki was about to ask what he planned to do, Mirai suddenly let go, causing Saki to fall and unilaterally ending their contract. Revel tried to intervene, but Saki stopped him, telling him not to come closer. As Saki struggled internally, she finally broke the contract. Surprised, Mirai caught her hand tightly as she was about to fall, revealing she didn't want to die, and their contract was restored. On the rooftop, Mirai said he had never blamed or been angry with her, which completely relieved Saki. The next day, Nanato came and shared new information, confirming Kanade was about 18 years old and a student. A detective hit by Kanade's red arrow was still investigating. Saki suggested they also look into a recently deceased doctor. If she needs help, she can use the red arrow. She also urged Mirai to quickly sketch Kanade's appearance. She mentioned that their current room was too small, so she used the red arrow to get her parents to rent a larger apartment on the top floor of a high-rise, convenient for flying in and out. Nanato said the uniforms were almost ready and that they were entering the final phase. He expressed a desire to become stronger and no longer be protected, aiming to gain wings and fight alongside them. Nanato noticed a significant change in Saki's attitude and asked Mirai what happened the previous night. Mirai replied that this was the real Saki. To help Saki gain wings, Revel announced his intention to become a first-class angel and humbly asked the knowledge angel Barrett how to achieve this. Barrett suggested that surpassing her in knowledge could even elevate him directly from second class to special class. Soon, Nanato returned home where his daughter thanked him for the costume he made. Nanato felt very happy and told her to look forward to the upcoming dresses. However, his daughter commented that it was too early to prepare a wedding dress. Surprised that she had guessed his plans, Nanato realized his naive daughter was unaware of his terminal illness. She suggested waiting a bit longer for her to grow up. Nanato hugged her, admitting he was foolish and just wanted to see her grow up and become a bride soon. She assured him that she would wear the wedding dress he made and be the most beautiful bride. Hajime was very ugly from birth, and his poverty and ugliness made him an outcast among his peers. One day, he came home to find his father had committed suicide. Losing his last relative, he could no longer hold on and contemplated ending his life. Just then, a beam of light appeared. It was the first-class angel Balta. Balta told him that as a god candidate, he would possess arrows that could make anyone fall in love with him. Hajime, overwhelmed, agreed and burst into tears. Soon after, he used a red arrow on the school beauty. However, as he was intimate with her, he saw his reflection in the mirror and was disgusted by his own appearance. Knowing her love was not genuine, he went home and complained to Balta that no one could truly like him for who he was. At that moment, he saw news about Kanade on TV and became completely infatuated. Balta suggested that Kanade, once unmasked, would likely be very wealthy and handsome. Hajime vowed to become a wealthy and attractive man. He started by working out to develop a six-pack, then underwent plastic surgery at a hospital. Afterward, walking down the street, he attracted many women's attention and looked very handsome in the mirror. He approached a girl he liked, but despite his new appearance, his sleazy smile scared her away. Even though he had become more handsome, he still couldn't succeed with women. Heartbroken, Hajime was watching TV when news about Kanade appeared again. Hajime was incredibly excited, but then saw an image of Kanade injured and alone. He resolved to help Kanade and even become his servant. Soon, through investigation, he discovered Kanade's true identity. He used a red arrow to have a girl tell Kanade she admired him deeply and wanted to be his servant, asking to meet him alone in the dance studio after school. Kanade shot a red arrow at the girl, confirming she was under the arrow's influence. When his real identity was exposed, an angry Kanade killed her with a white arrow. Soon after, Kanade arrived at the dance studio. Hajime, being clever, did not show himself, but instead used a voice call to express his desire to become Kanade's servant. Kanade asked him to prove his sincerity by doing something for him. Quickly, Hajime captured Nanato's wife and daughter, locking them in a glass room. At that moment, a red arrow returned to Nanato's hand, indicating a detective he had shot had died. Nanato realized something was amiss and asked Mirai to come with him. On the way, Nanato tried calling his wife, but got no answer. He mentioned their identities might have been exposed, likely by the deceased detective. Upon returning home, Nanato searched everywhere for his wife and daughter, but couldn't find them until he saw the wedding dress he made for his daughter torn apart, confirming something bad had happened. Back home, Nanato banged his head against the wall, frustrated that his becoming a god candidate, meant to protect his family, had instead put them in danger. Just then, Nanato's phone suddenly rang. Kanade flashed a wicked smile. Upon hearing the message, Nanato rushed out immediately. Have you seen how Revel learns? Revel stuffs golden spheres into his brain, each equivalent to the knowledge of 10,000 books. However, the vast amount of information nearly burst his brain. Revel is so desperate because he wants to help Saki and improve his rank to earn her angel wings. Since Nanato's wife and daughter were kidnapped by a god candidate, Saki could only stay at home, unable to help, feeling useless and like a burden to everyone. At this time, Revel found Saki feeling sad alone outside. He promised to work hard to become a first-class angel, saying he understands her feelings and blamed himself for not being able to give Saki wings. Saki looked at Revel in disbelief, but then tears appeared around Revel, unusual since angels do not cry, only humans do. Suddenly the surroundings changed and God appeared, stating he had shed tears. He was the first angel to cry for humans, so he was promoted to a first-class angel and could also call himself the Angel of Emotion. Saki was stunned. Revel then threw the incense burner on his head to Saki, giving her angel wings. Now she also had the ability to fight. Revel urged her to hurry and help Nanato. Meanwhile, Nanato had just arrived at the amusement park and quickly found Hajime guarding the place alone. Nanato found his wife and daughter bound and locked in a room. He went to ensure their safety, but the mother and daughter could hear sounds without seeing outside, realizing it was a one-way mirror. Desperate to save them, Nanato entered the room. Hajime was very pleased, having easily tricked him inside. At the same moment, Mirai aimed a white arrow at him, but quickly switched to a red arrow aimed at Nanato. Fortunately, Mirai reacted quickly and shot the white arrow, but Hajime easily dodged it. Inside, Nanato discovered he couldn't escape, and even gunfire couldn't break the glass. As Mirai pondered how to rescue them, Hajime appeared with his angel, and Kanade appeared behind Mirai, trapping him between them. Now in a 2-on-1 disadvantage, Mirai risked being pinned by Hajime, allowing Kanade to shoot a white arrow at any moment. Determined to prevent any deaths, Mirai decided to enter the room and stay with Nanato. Once inside, Mirai instructed Nanato to hold his wife and fly at full speed inside the room, making it harder for them to be hit by arrows from outside. To survive, Nanato complied. Unable to see them, Kanade decided to leave and instructed Hajime to wait for them to stop, as Nanato, already ill, felt he couldn't keep going much longer. Mirai encouraged him to hold on, promising a miracle might happen. Indeed, just then, Saki, having gained wings, arrived in time, and the angels briefed her on the situation. Saki prepared to shoot Hajime with a red arrow. Revel warned that she might expose herself since Kanade could have hit him with a red arrow too. Without hesitation, Saki fired the red arrow, successfully hitting Hajime. Confused who shot him, Hajime turned around and saw the adorable Saki. He completely fell for her. Suddenly he remembered he was still Kanade's servant, leaving him extremely conflicted and causing him to shout in distress. Torn between his admiration for Kanade and his irresistible love for Saki, Hajime didn't know what to do. As Kanade asked him what was happening, Hajime was about to speak, but saw Saki in the distance. Saki decided she needed to make him deeply fall for her and acted like she liked him too. Hajime was utterly captivated by her. It turned out that Saki had just shot him with the red arrow, making him utterly obsessed with her. Now, Hajime's mind was filled with thoughts of Saki, feeling as if he was born just to meet her. When Kanade asked what he was doing, Hajime replied he had been holding it too long and needed to go to the restroom. Kanade told him to handle it on the spot since no one was watching. However, Hajime said he was too shy with someone watching and couldn't go. Reluctantly, Kanade told him to hurry back, and then Hajime flew toward Saki and arrived behind her. When Saki saw him, she asked him to release the people inside the glass house, who were very important to her. Upon hearing this, Hajime flew directly over and struck the roof heavily with a knife. That's when Kanade realized Hajime had been hit by the red arrow. The two inside heard the noise outside. Nanato suspected it was a trap set by Kanade, but then heard Revel's voice. Unable to hold back, Kanade rushed over, but Hajime blocked his path in time. Hajime declared he would eliminate him for Saki's sake. At that moment, Mirai noticed the roof had a hole pierced by the knife. Nanato decisively shot at the hole, breaking the glass and allowing them to escape successfully. Although the situation had turned to a 4 against 4, Nanato's wife and daughter were still there. Nanato decided to send his family to safety first. Ryuji objected to letting him go, but Kanade insisted on letting him proceed, or he wouldn't fight wholeheartedly. Saki then took Nanato's wife back to the base. Meanwhile, Ryuji, unable to contain his desire for battle and his heavy machine guns ready, was told by Kanade to calm down. Fuyuko suggested giving him a tranquilizer. Saki arrived, took Nanato's daughter, whispered something to Mirai, who then understood her plan. Soon after, Saki returned. At that moment, Kanade issued a soul-searching question. Could they really kill ordinary people who had been shot? Nanato mockingly agreed, noting they were all ordinary. Mirai began to struggle internally, but knew they still needed to eliminate Kanade. Suddenly, Nanato aimed a red arrow at him, declaring he wouldn't let him kill with a white arrow. Mirai instantly understood Nanato's intention. They needed to shoot each other with red arrows to avoid being controlled by Kanade's red arrows. Nanato stated that now only Kanade could be targeted with red arrows. Unconcerned, Kanade retorted that the 3 of them were sufficient. Ryuji, waiting for this moment, opened fire on the approaching Hajime, who agilely dodged the bullets in the air, thanks to his wings. Revel then instructed Saki and Mirai to fly in to support, as arrows and wings are impervious to earthly materials, but wings can affect each other. Saki and Mirai used their wings to trap Ryuji's, causing him to lose control and start to fall. Understanding the situation, Hajime, armed with a katana, charged and successfully severed Ryuji's right hand with a powerful slash. Injured, Ryuji had no choice but to flee in defeat. Seeing this, Kanade sent Fuyuko into action. She produced the strongest virus in history, intending to use them as test subjects for a new virus designed to dissolve human bodies, threatening to release it otherwise. The crazed Fuyuko wanted to witness people being dissolved alive. Kanade designated Mirai as the first test subject and stood on top of the Ferris wheel, wings retracted. If they refused, the virus would be released. Hearing this, Mirai gave Saki a deep look and then flew up to the Ferris wheel, where he retracted his wings. Nanato, stuck in a deadlock, didn't know what to do. If Fuyuko were killed, the virus would still spread. Fuyuko then ordered Hajime and Nanato to drop their weapons, and the two, now passive, complied. She instructed Mirai to walk slowly toward her. Carefully walking, Mirai thought about what to do next. Saki tearfully watched, while Nanato racked his brain but couldn't find a solution. As Mirai reached Fuyuko, she hesitated no longer and aimed a syringe at him. Mirai closed his eyes, ready to accept it. Just as the needle was about to pierce his arm, Mirai unfolded his wings and entered a rapid state, grabbing her hand before she could react. Seeing this, Fuyuko pressed a button and released the virus. Just when everyone thought it was over, Mirai struck the virus with a white arrow, revealing a tactic no one expected. Nanato urged him to kill her, but Mirai hesitated, questioning whether to use a white arrow for killing. Not wanting to miss the opportunity, Nanato, influenced by a red arrow, told Mirai to kill Fuyuko with a white arrow. However, Mirai was deeply resistant to killing and unsure of what to do next. Not killing Fuyuko could lead to millions dying. At that moment, Nanato, suffering from a terminal illness, could no longer hold himself in the air and fell. He found a machine gun in front of him and, using his last strength, set it up aiming at Fuyuko. But now, he didn't even have the strength to pull the trigger. Meanwhile, Kanade prepared to shoot a white arrow, enhancing its range with a red arrow. Seeing the danger, Mirai also released a white arrow to block his. Nanato urged him to strike quickly. Kanade then shot a combined red and white arrow at Mirai. Upon receiving the signal, Fuyuko immediately unfolded her wings and launched all 3 poison needles from her hand towards Mirai. This was all part of Kanade's plan. Mirai, unable to shoot a white arrow or let go, would have to use his free right hand to deal with the poison needles. Even if he could block the 3 needles, there was still the fast-approaching white arrow to contend with. This was his certain demise. Seeing Mirai about to be hit, Saki flew in front of him to block the attack. The poison needles and white arrow were almost upon them. As the white arrow was about to hit Saki, it suddenly changed direction. Fortunately, Mirai managed to deflect it with a white arrow at that moment, but there was no time to deal with the incoming poison needles. If nothing was done, Saki would be hit by the poison needles. Seeing Saki in danger, Hajime burst into action, picked up the fallen katana, and slashed 2 of the poison needles as they flew towards them. Hajime used all his strength to slash at the last needle, but unexpectedly missed. He blocked the fatal blow for Saki. Onlookers were left in shock. The poison quickly corroded his body after being injected into his arm. Hajime's body began to melt from the virus. In her astonishment, Fuyuko realized she had been struck by the blade. Hajime successfully killed Fuyuko. In his final moments, Hajime expressed his happiness to die for his beloved Saki, who was moved to tears. Balta came to take his soul and gave Saki Hajime's wings and red arrow, stating that Hajime had finally found redemption. As Nanato urged Mirai to keep fighting, his illness overcame him, and he collapsed, spitting blood. Seeing this, Kanade launched a white arrow. Mirai quickly rushed to carry Nanato away, urging him to hold on and promising to get him to a hospital. Nanato insisted Mirai continue the fight, wishing to see Kanade's end. Mirai then entrusted Saki with taking care of Nanato. Kanade commanded Suzumu to fight them, but Suzumu, seeing his comrades dead, became frightened and flew away. Now, It was down to the final showdown between Mirai and Kanade. Mirai refused to use a white arrow, not wanting to stain his hands, opting to fight with a red arrow instead. Kanade, disdainful, drew a white arrow, challenging which would be faster, his white arrow or Mirai's red arrow. The epic battle was about to begin. Despite being extremely protective of his sister, Kanade had pushed Rhea from a height, causing her head to hit the steps, leading to her death. 2.5 minutes before she fell, Rhea mentioned she was in a relationship. Kanade, unable to tolerate her being with someone else, accidentally pushed her during an argument. Rhea fell from a high platform, her life tragically ending at 16. As Kanade held the lifeless Rhea, intending to call an ambulance, he changed his mind upon seeing her beautiful face. After staging a fake funeral for Rhea, he satisfied his twisted desires by cryogenically preserving her in a device to permanently keep her appearance. Recalling happy times, he indulged in memories of wandering through a floral world created for Rhea, adoringly watching her. He believed that wealth could create beauty, and the best education made people more beautiful, while poverty brought only filth. Now, all that beauty was gone, and he deeply regretted it, wishing Rhea could live well. Then, drawing a dagger, he prepared to join Rhea. At that moment, an angel appeared and told him that becoming a god could resurrect Rhea. Fueled by this delusion, Kanade, a ruthless urban hero, now faced Mirai in a one-on-one duel, streamed online by the previously escaped Suzumu. Suddenly, Kanade launched a white arrow, but Mirai deflected it with a red arrow. Kanade warned him not to play any tricks, while Mirai declared his intent to fight honorably. The red arrow shot out, but surprisingly, Kanade caught the attack. He then declared his change of heart towards the twisted world, expressing a desire to eliminate discrimination, poverty, and inequality, to create a society where everyone is affluent by killing all the poor. Mirai argued that no one has the right to deprive others of happiness, to which Kanade replied that becoming a god would give him that right. Nanato was furious upon hearing this, questioning what kind of world that would be. Suddenly, Kanade fired a white arrow, but Mirai blocked the attack and charged forward with a red arrow. As Mirai approached, Kanade fired another white arrow, but Mirai finally hit Kanade with a red arrow, which, however, failed to penetrate. It was then revealed that Kanade had already been struck by a red arrow earlier. Mirai then used his wings to blind Kanade by wrapping them around his head, rendering him unable to see or touch the wings. Seeing this, Saki rushed over and grabbed him. Trapped, Kanade struggled desperately but was powerless, bound on both sides. Nanato, suffering from a terminal illness and barely holding on, his vision blurring and body swaying, knew his life was nearing its end. For his wife and daughter, he mustered his last strength to pull the trigger, sending a barrage of bullets toward Kanade, who heard the gunfire in utter despair. The bullets fired struck him, turning him into a sieve. Ultimately, Kanade faced the justice he deserved. Nanato, taken to the hospital, could not be saved despite the doctor's efforts, and thus met his end. Barrett came to take his soul, handing over his wings and red arrow to Saki. Nanato passed away contentedly, knowing his family was happy. Kanade was defeated, and surprisingly, the biggest winner turned out to be Suzumu, who inherited all of Kanade's wings and arrows, including the shining white arrow, thanks to Hajime's angel Balta. Balta had revealed Kanade's true identity, claiming his angel was his own brother. Afterwards, Balta carried Hajime off to heaven. Previously, when Kanade and classmates had visited an archery club, he had been struck by a red arrow. Suzumu then asked Kanade to come home with him, and under the influence of the red arrow, Kanade led him without resistance. Suzumu marveled at the luxury of Kanade's base and even wished for Kanade's room if he died, as well as Mirai's white arrow for future battles, insisting on a clear victory even in adversity. Kanade agreed to all his demands. Meanwhile, Mirai was still grieving over losing Nanato. Saki urged him to rest, noting he hadn't slept in 2.5 days. Mirai wondered what Nanato's family would think of his actions and admitted his own role in assisting, despite initially resolving not to kill. Saki reassured him that Nanato had acted for the world, and thus, Mirai hadn't done anything wrong. At that moment, his judgment was both correct and brave. Mirai turned around in surprise to Saki, not expecting her to say such a thing. It was then he realized that Saki was under the influence of a red arrow. Mirai asked Nasse if there was a way to nullify the red arrow's effect. Nasse replied that they could only wait for the red arrow to expire naturally after 2.5 weeks. Saki then stated her feelings were genuine and unrelated to the red arrow, having fallen for him even before being struck. Their subsequent battles only deepened her affection. Mirai decided to stop dwelling on it and set out to find who was controlling Kanade. The next day, the remaining 6 angels gathered to discuss and decided to expedite the process of choosing someone genuinely willing to become a god. However, none of the angels' candidates wanted to ascend to godhood. At that point, the game angel Panema spoke up, mentioning that his partner had already taken proactive steps. Everyone then placed their hopes on Panema's partner. Soon, Suzumu appeared on TV being interviewed. Mirai and Saki recognized him as the Suzumu who had fled the amusement park. During the interview, Suzumu removed his hood, flew into the sky to prove he was a god candidate, and revealed everything about the god candidates to the reporters. At this moment, the people on the streets became aware of the god candidate's existence. Since ordinary people cannot see angels, he showed them drawings of his angel. Revel then informed everyone that Panema was a first-class angel. When asked why he wanted to commit suicide, Suzumu clarified that he had never considered suicide and generally got along well with his classmates, although he lacked close friends. My parents both work, so I come home to an empty house every day. Without a smartphone, watching TV and reading comics become boring. I also lack the motivation to study and have no particular hopes for the future. I just want to live a simple life, although it feels lonely. One day I saw my parents' sleeping pills on the table. As I was about to tidy them up, Panema appeared. Life became interesting after I acquired the red arrow, using it and the wings daily. However, Kanade appeared, and I learned I was marked for death just as I began to enjoy a happy life. Fortunately, an angel named Balta helped me. When a reporter asked if I planned to discuss godly matters, I explained that it wasn't about the ongoing selection of a god. I wanted the whole world to know who the god candidates were before deciding who should be god. Therefore, I aimed to have the world help find the other candidates. Mirai and the others were shocked by Suzumu's idea to use the whole world to identify the remaining candidates. Mirai, a saintly murderer, was repenting for killing an ant on his way home when Messiah, a police officer, targeted him. Unexpectedly, Messiah announced that the higher-ups had decided to arrest all god candidates. As Mirai backed away, sensing danger, Messiah reassured him that he would not arrest him. Seeing Mirai's reaction, he asked whether Mirai had used the white or red arrow. As an ordinary person, he couldn't see the arrows. 2.5 days ago, Suzumu broadcasted live on TV, asking the world to find the god candidates. This caught the attention of the police. Messiah ordered Suzumu's arrest and instructed the reporters present to distract him without raising suspicion. As Suzumu faced forward, a nervous reporter picked up the microphone to ask a question. Meanwhile, the police quietly moved behind Suzumu and shot a capture net at him. Fortunately, Suzumu reacted quickly, spread his wings, and dodged the net. He lamented that instead of finding other candidates, they were trying to capture him, which was ironic. Disappointed, he flew away, leaving the crowd at the scene confused. At the same time, Kanade's classmate, Mizukio, saw the news. His date, a girl from the archery club, complained about the recent emergence of god candidates and mentioned that someone claimed Mizukio was also a candidate. Surprised by this, Mizukio, unpopular and recently in a relationship with a cute girl, realized rumors claimed he had used a red arrow on her. Frustrated, he then noticed a man in sunglasses watching them. Without hesitating, Mizukio grabbed the girl and ran, convinced the man was monitoring him because of his close acquaintance with Kanade. At this time, the government's top officials were meeting, discussing how countries worldwide would vie for this power. They knew that possessing the power of a god candidate could replace nuclear weapons and facilitate assassinations more easily. Unsure of what to do, the officials kept their discussions confidential. To avoid exposure, Mirai decided to continue attending school normally. Unexpectedly, he encountered the police on his way home from school. The officer assured him that he would not be arrested, but naturally, Mirai was skeptical. Messiah mentioned that his subordinates might have also encountered Saki. As Mirai looked back, He saw that Saki had already struck Manami with a red arrow. Startled by Manami's sudden approach, Saki was frightened. Masaya quickly came over to check on Manami and asked her who she loved the most now. Manami looked toward Saki, who was not far away. Masaya revealed that Manami was both his subordinate and wife, marveling at the power of the red arrow. He informed them that the government had started investigating the god candidates and that they were also being watched. Mirai asked him who he was. Masaya introduced himself as someone trying to save them, explaining that the government had not yet discovered their identities, but it was only a matter of time. He invited Mirai to come with him, but Mirai and the others did not trust Masaya's words. Knowing they would be cautious, Masaya pointed out that they could escape any time with their wings. Ultimately, Mirai and the others got into the car. On the car, Masaya revealed that Manami had discovered their real identities but had not reported it, so no one else knew. Mirai did not understand his approach. The man said he wanted to use his power to select suitable god candidates to prevent them from becoming killing machines for various countries. They soon arrived at Masaya's house and were told to hide there temporarily. Saki felt they were all good people, and Mirai agreed, especially since they now needed their help to gather intelligence. Mirai agreed to cooperate and shared everything he knew. To facilitate the investigation, Saki gave Manami an extra pair of wings, allowing her to investigate more effectively. Manami also saw two angels and quickly began analyzing the data they already had. These were the confirmed god candidates. There were still two candidates whose identities had not been confirmed, and one man was using his status as a god candidate to make money and had gathered a group of followers. This attracted the attention of Mirai and his group. Mirai suddenly appeared in front of the man's car. The man braked urgently, but found no one there. At that moment, Mirai confirmed he was not a god candidate. Meanwhile, Mizukio also came under their scrutiny. Masaya noted that he was Kanade's classmate, which was significant. Mizukio had just dropped the girl off at her apartment building. She was delighted with their date today, and ran back inside after saying goodbye, while Mizukio danced excitedly. Turning around, he was startled to see Mirai standing behind him with his hand raised. The boy had an arrow that could make anyone fall in love with him. Seeing his grandfather suffer daily with a respirator, he wanted to relieve his pain and shot a red arrow at him, saying, "You can die now." The grandfather removed his respirator and passed away, believing he had done a good deed. Previously, he was suspected of being a god candidate. Therefore, Masaya planned to have Saki confirm his identity. However, when Saki went to find Mirai for this task, they discovered Mirai had found Mizukio, who was also a suspected god candidate. Seeing Mirai's posture, Mizukio thought of Kanade using arrows to kill, and shouted not to kill him with arrows. This confirmed to Mirai that Mizukio was indeed a god candidate. When asked why he didn't flee, Mizukio confessed he had no wings. Saki realized he was a second-class angel. Mirai then shot Mizukio with a red arrow and approached him, stating, "For the next 2.5 weeks, we are allies." Saki mentioned that the last one must be a special class angel and lived not far from there. This person was Shuji, who prepared to use a red arrow to make his brother, who no longer wanted to live, commit suicide. However, his brother was very afraid of death deep down. As Shuji shot the red arrow, it was deflected at the last moment because Mirai and the others arrived in time to prevent the tragedy. At that moment, Revel noticed that Shuji's angel was first class. Mirai, puzzled, turned to Mizukio to ask about the angel's rank. Mizukio then apologized, admitting he had no angel and had lied out of fear for his life. At this point, Shuji stated they had arrived just in time to kill him, as he no longer wanted to live anyway. Initially, he saw the wings and arrows as a hope for survival, but living on was merely due to ugly desires and troubles. His angel Ogaro did not oppose his thoughts. Revel said this was a thought only a dark angel would have and aimed a red arrow at his brother, offering to help him commit suicide. However, Mirai stepped in to stop him. Shuji asked Mirai for a reason why suicide should not be an option. Mirai responded that he didn't want others to die unhappily. He hoped they could live happily instead. Shuji said that was just Mirai's feeling. At that moment, Mizukio stepped forward and said, "If you die, someone will be sad." Shuji claimed he had no friends and no one would be sad. Mizukio countered that even without friends, there are people who care about him. He mentioned Kanade, who was not exactly a friend, but sometimes they watched girls together. He didn't consider Mizukio a friend. Yet Mizukyo was very saddened by his death. Thus, someone will always be sad if you die. Shuji realized he didn't want to cause trouble for others. Mirai then invited Shuji to follow them back to the safe house to ensure his safety. Shuji eventually agreed to their request. At this point, Masaya discussed the method to find the last god candidate by making them appear in the public eye, using the internet to spread the word, and hoping for a peaceful discussion. Soon, Suzumu appeared, saying he had been waiting for Mirai, but doubting he was the real Mirai. He prepared to use a red arrow. Upon seeing this, Mirai and Saki also prepared their red arrows for defense. Saki warned to be cautious, as Suzumu was now the strongest god candidate. To make Suzumu believe him, Mirai let him shoot a red arrow. Suzumu fired the arrow immediately, but Mirai successfully blocked it. Recognizing the familiar maneuver, Suzumu trusted Mirai. Mirai suggested they go somewhere secluded to talk, and the next second, they vanished. They arrived in outer space. Knowing Suzumu also wanted to select a god, Mirai invited him to join their search. Suzumu agreed, happy that this aligned with his expectations. Mirai then gave him a smartphone that could contact them without being monitored. Their next step was to contact Yuri, who was previously captured and now confined in a room, complaining to the camera about being bored without her phone. Suddenly, many angels appeared, instructing her to act as if she hadn't seen them. However, the surveillance personnel noticed an anomaly as she appeared to talk to the air, but they didn't pay it much mind, finding the idea of angels far-fetched. Revel shared the plan with her. They would call for the last god candidate to come forward and discuss who should become god. Yuri agreed to their approach, but was unsure how to escape since she was under 24-hour surveillance. Was humanity or God first? Some believe humans existed first, then created gods. Others think gods created humans. Gaku mentioned that the universe was born 13.8 billion years ago, and Earth formed 4.6 billion years later. Earth then developed water, leading to microbes, which evolved into fish, amphibians, and reptiles. Millions of years later, humans appeared, hunted, and farmed. To secure more food, they began praying to gods of their own creation. Today, humans perform surgeries and genetic experiments and have entered space. No one believes in gods in the sky anymore. Gaku, who said this, is the last god candidate. The day before, all angels came to help Yuri escape surveillance. When officers found her behavior odd, Yuri suddenly collapsed. They claimed she had attempted suicide multiple times before. Masaya ordered his men to check on her. They entered the room to find Yuri unresponsive, no matter how they called out. As they approached, Yuri turned and shot them with a red arrow. Unprepared, the three could not react. Yuri then stood up and commanded them to help her escape. Under their guard, she ran into a room, destroyed all surveillance equipment, leaving the monitors baffled. Yuri then smashed a window, jumped out, and ran towards the woods. Masaya ordered everyone to capture her. They quickly caught up and tackled her to the ground, only to realize it was a decoy controlled by the red arrow, while the real Yuri had already escaped. At that moment, Suzumu appeared, along with Mirai and Saki. Yuri then asked Suzumu for wings as a reward for her escape, and he unhesitatingly gave them to her. With her new wings, Yuri was very happy. For safety, Mirai suggested everyone return home. Back home, the 5 god candidates discussed who should become god. Ultimately, Shuji decided to take the role, as Ogaro explained that becoming a god meant no longer living on Earth, but guarding humanity with the angels in heaven. Shuji, being desireless, was deemed the best choice. However, they still needed the last, yet unmet, god candidate to agree. The angels predicted this wouldn't be easy, as the remaining candidate was the destructive angel Muni's protege. The next day, they were ready to draw out the last candidate and flew towards a TV station. Soon, they were above it, attracting attention from onlookers below. Meanwhile, the government also prepared to capture them, wanting to control their power comparable to nuclear weapons. Then, the destructive angel Muni appeared, stating his partner would listen to their plans before deciding on godhood. A drone flew in front of them, ready to livestream their speech. Shuji then declared that as a god, he would create a world where suicide is not only a freedom, but also praised. This statement shocked some and resonated with others. At this point, Yuri said she would create a world where no one has to work, but she hadn't figured out who would handle production and manufacturing. Suzumu then expressed his desire for everyone in the world to possess a white arrow to make things more exciting. Saki, on the other hand, wished for everyone to have a kind heart and to live in a world where smiles are abundant. When it was Mirai's turn, he said he wouldn't do anything. Just after he spoke, Gaku appeared. Shuji recognized Gaku, revealing himself as a fan of Gaku. Gaku, however, declared that gods do not exist. The gods that do exist are not as imagined, but are false gods. Gaku then explained the origin of gods, stating their actions stemmed from the decreased belief in them, which weakened them over time. The god selection event was intended to bolster belief in gods to prevent their disappearance. Hearing this, Shuji, who already doubted the existence of gods, chose to join Gaku. At that moment, Suzumu spotted a sniper nearby. Startled, the man aimed his gun at Suzumu. As Suzumu prepared to shoot a red arrow at him, Mirai stopped him and urged him to leave. Then, voices through the man's earpiece instructed everyone to aim at their targets and to continue aiming at Mirai. As Suzumu was puzzled, a bullet struck him from behind, instantly creating a hole in his body. The gods are facing the day they might disappear, simply because modern people no longer worship them, leading to a decline in the power of belief and their imminent disappearance. Therefore, a successor is to be chosen from 13 god candidates, but now only 5 remain. Just now, Suzumu was killed by a sniper. The national leaders want to control the power of the god candidates and prevent other countries from seizing it, so they sent snipers to kill them all. As Mirai tried to save the injured Suzumu, Gaku quickly took Suzumu away, concluding that the gunshot wounded Suzumu was beyond saving. He then used a white arrow to end Suzumu's life, taking all his wings and arrows. Nasse took Suzumu's soul away. Seeing this, Mirai and the others had no choice but to return to their base. Meanwhile, Gaku went elsewhere, using a red arrow to control all the security personnel and barge directly into the Prime Minister's room. He demanded the Prime Minister broadcast a live conversation of the god candidates nationwide. When the Prime Minister hesitated, he was struck by Gaku's red arrow. Gaku also gave him a red arrow to control capable and competent ministers. The Prime Minister quickly called an emergency meeting, stating that Gaku requested a secure location for dialogue. After much deliberation, the authorities decided to provide a stadium for their discussion, scheduled in 2.5 days. Lastly, they released a video of Gaku, who declared his disbelief in gods, stating modern times do not need such false forms of gods, and warned against any attempts to kill the god candidates. Even if they aimed to kill simultaneously, a mere 0.1 second discrepancy could make the last person transform into a godly form and become a god. Mirai and his friends were shocked by this news. They sought confirmation from the angels and were told it was true. Mirai felt the need to talk to Gaku again. Yuri said that if a new god is not chosen, both the old gods and the god candidates will die, and no one will find happiness. At that point, Mirai decided that if Gaku disagreed, he would kill him. That evening, noticing that Mirai was not in good spirits, Saki invited him out for a private talk. Mirai took Saki to the pyramids, the first place he visited after receiving his wings, and remarked on how much time had passed since becoming a god candidate. They quietly looked up at the sky, slowly holding each other's hands, hoping that being together would be the perfect ending. Soon, 2.5 days passed. Gaku and Shuji were already waiting inside the stadium. Mirai and Saki quickly arrived, joined by Yuri and Masaya. Gaku bluntly stated that gods should not exist, vowing to prevent the god candidates from becoming false gods and planning to kill all 3, Mirai, Yuri, and Masaya. Killing all god candidates was the only way to prevent the godly form. After killing them, he planned to die together with Shuji, who was previously given a white arrow. However, there could be no errors in timing. Otherwise, the last surviving candidate would transform into a godly form. This means killing all god candidates was essential to end the matter, and experiments were conducted to ensure no godly form would emerge. Have a shoot B with a white arrow, and immediately after, use another white arrow on A. As soon as A is hit, A dies and B dies from A's arrow. But this timing must not exceed 0.15 seconds to ensure that neither becomes a god. If Gaku refuses to allow the god candidates to become gods, he is prepared to act personally. Gaku does not believe in the existence of false gods. and insists that god candidates should not transform into godly forms and must be killed. Meanwhile, Mirai chooses to become a god for everyone's happiness, leading to a disagreement. Gaku asks for a private talk with Mirai. Unexpectedly, Masaya asks to stay without interfering. Saki and the others then leave, leaving Gaku and Mirai alone. Gaku tells Mirai that to become a god, he must kill himself, but he does not see this resolve in Mirai. Surprisingly, the usually pacifist Mirai uses a white arrow and aims it at Gaku. As people in the room try to stop Mirai, Shuji locks the door, warning them not to interfere or he will kill them. Yuri realizes they were deceived. Shuji says they just need to wait for the conversation to end. Suddenly, Manami rushes forward, grabs Shuji's hand holding the white arrow, and throws him to the ground. Saki shoots him with a red arrow, but it turns out he was already hit by a red arrow from Gaku. Manami reluctantly lets him go, resulting in a standoff. At that moment, Gaku said that Mirai wouldn't dare to fire a white arrow, as he had never used one before. Before Gaku could finish speaking, Mirai fired a white arrow. Gaku dodged the attack with his wings, surprised that Mirai could release a white arrow without hesitation. Mirai argued that Gaku's aim to eliminate gods would sacrifice many people and affect his own happiness. Gaku retorted that he was stubborn to the end and showed Mirai a photo on his phone of Saki tied up, forcing him to choose. Either give up becoming a false god or watch Saki die, giving him only 28 seconds to decide. Faced with this choice, Mirai relinquished his aim to become a god. Gaku expressed disappointment, reminding him that just 2.5 minutes ago, he had spoken of becoming a god for everyone's sake, and that overcoming himself could save millions. Mirai responded that Saki was very important to him and accused Gaku of being inhumane, asserting that his choice was justified. Gaku then forced another choice on him. Either he dies or Saki dies, as his ultimate goal was to eliminate all god candidates. At this point, Nasse intervened, advising Mirai not to make a rash decision because his death would mean he could no longer achieve happiness. Remembering what Saki had said the day before strengthened Mirai's resolve. Just as a white arrow was about to hit Mirai, Nasse suddenly saved him, declaring that Mirai must not die or everything would truly end. Suddenly, Nasse was subjected to divine punishment and trapped in a black water sphere. At that moment, Masaya caught Mirai in time. Nasse, having interfered with the god selection process, was demoted from special to second-class angel and had to retract the wings and white arrow previously granted to Mirai. Fortunately, Nasse survived. Gaku then ordered Masaya to let him go and prepared to shoot Mirai with a white arrow again. Without wings, Mirai, facing the imminent threat, could do nothing and resigned himself to death for Saki's sake. As he thought of Saki, she suddenly rescued him, startling Gaku. Mirai was quite surprised. They all returned to the gymnasium where Gaku discovered that Shuji, under the influence of a red arrow, had turned against him. Manami explained that Shuji couldn't bring himself to kill someone who wanted to live. Gaku then demanded the white arrow back from Shuji, who remained silent. Just as Gaku found this odd, Yuri appeared behind him and shot a white arrow at Gaku. Unexpectedly, Nasse saved Gaku. Yuri questioned her actions, and at that moment, a divine punishment appeared. But this time, it was a reward, and Nasse was upgraded back to a special angel. At this, Gaku was utterly despondent as his plans had failed completely. Finally, Gaku decided to withdraw from the god selection and intended to commit suicide. However, Shuji urgently persuaded Gaku not to die. Gaku explained that he wanted to prove that gods were unnecessary and sought the truth, yet he was saved by angels twice. Unexpectedly, it was Shuji who ended up becoming a god. Gaku confirmed Shuji's intentions once more, and Shuji affirmed his conviction, a decision that was affirmed by all the god candidates. Now, all the angels flew to Shuji's side and enveloped him. Then, a white halo spread out, freezing every living being on Earth at that moment. They were asked if they wished to retain their memories as god candidates. Because Gaku had promised Yuri a good life, she chose not to keep these memories. Undoubtedly, Gaku chose to keep his memories as he was still waiting for Shuji's answer. Mirai also chose to retain his memories. He did not want to forget this growth experience and wanted to remember the deceased god candidates. Saki felt the same. Knowing everyone's wishes, Shuji made his final farewell and prepared to merge with the sun god. Shuji merged directly into the body of the old god, instantly revitalizing the frail body. After becoming a god, he slowly disappeared from the human world and returned to the heavenly realm. At that moment, everyone on Earth regained consciousness, but was utterly bewildered. Yuri was surprised to find herself alive, unsure of her purpose there. Gaku told her she was his lab assistant, and Yuri, in her naive manner, believed him. Mirai looked at Saki, took her hand, and said, "Let's go home." Thus, the selection of the god ended, and everyone returned home. Meanwhile, Shuji arrived in the heavenly realm where time passes slower than in the human world. He felt the old god's consciousness still lingering in his mind. Obenro told him that his consciousness would gradually take over the old god's. At that moment, he saw souls brought back by angels, all of which were thrown into the water. Ogaro said this was to preserve the form of humans at the time of their death. Shuji asked what the purpose of this was. Ogaro replied that even the gods were unclear, let alone them. Then a voice declared that humans were his creation. A sphere of light appeared, claiming it was the god within him. Shuji didn't believe that gods created humans. Rather, it should be that humans created gods. The old god agreed, stating he was both a created and a creator, yet even he didn't know how he came into existence. Confused, Shuji decided to explore this himself. In the human world, Yuri was conducting research with Gaku, and finally living the good life she desired. Unexpectedly, Shuji had left the red arrow with Gaku, who couldn't resist studying it. Mirai and Saki entered into marriage, vowing to love each other for life and to grow old together. They also opened their own flower shop. Seeing everyone leading happy lives felt good. Next, he wanted to see those who wished to die. Surprisingly, there were so many suicides. He deeply pondered why the world was like this. At this point, the sun god said not to worry about human life as it would proliferate on its own. He thought about ignoring humanity, questioning the need for gods at all. He recalled Gaku saying gods were imaginary and had no physical form or way to judge death. If he died, it would impact the world, and the red arrow left to Gaku would disappear. This would actually inform Gaku that the god had died. He then asked Ogaro to summon all the angels, despite the old god advising against it. Suddenly, the angels turned to dust and disappeared. Ogaro felt something was wrong and turned around, only to discover that the god had used a white arrow to commit suicide. Nasse, the most beloved angel, also vanished. At that moment, humans on Earth began to disappear gradually. Mirai realized this was Shuji's choice, and the two embraced tightly, soon completely vanishing from the world. Gaku noticed the red arrow in his hand was gone, and the Nasses had disappeared as well. He realized this was the message Shuji was sending him. Gods were a figment of human imagination, a weapon meant to destroy mankind. Just as Gaku was about to understand everything, he too completely disappeared from the world. Earth became a world devoid of any life.